r/nosleep. Posted by you/nslewis. I got paid $20,000 to test a video game and now everything I love is dead. My buddy Steve was a genius at making money without doing anything. At one point, he was enrolled in 12 different clinical trials at the same time. Some of these were for drugs that would have had bad interactions, but it didn't matter to Steve, because he never actually took the drugs. He did it like they do in the movies and just slipped them under his tongue and then spat them into his hand when the doc was turned away. Other trials were for new therapeutic approaches and things like that, but those were no problem for Steve either. At most, he had to lie, literally and metaphorically, on somebody's couch for an hour each week, then collect his check on the way out. But eventually they caught on, and Steve was put on some kind of list. There was a nationwide ban on Steve, so that he couldn't participate in any more trials sponsored by universities or private drug companies, which essentially precluded him from that easy money. But Steve found a workaround. Not all experiments are above board and sanctioned by the FDA or whatever. There is, in fact, a hidden world of people testing things out in their garages, streamlining the whole process, without having to worry about pesky and expensive regulations. One of Steve's friends gave him a link to a forum on the dark web, and after that, he was in the pipeline. The thing about these experiments is that if it were for, say, a new drug, they didn't trust you to just swallow the pill. You had to open your mouth and lift your tongue. You had to actually take the thing, because these people weren't fucking around. But boy did they pay. One morning, I was awakened by an insanely loud banging at my apartment door. "Who's that?" moaned my girlfriend, Sophia. I looked at the clock with bleary eyes. It was 5:55 a.m. "Open up, dude," shouted Steve from the hallway. "Oh fuck him," said Sophia. "He could be in trouble," I said, shooting out of bed, full of adrenaline. I answered the door in my boxers, and there was Steve, bouncing up and down, his pupils each the size of the full moon. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm awesome," said Steve. "Holy shit, dude. This stuff. They gave me $1,000 to take one fucking pill and it rules so much. It feels so good. Oh my god, Jay. Oh my god." My head hurt as I tried to piece together a thought. "So you're high? And you came to tell me that you got paid a lot of money to get high?" I felt a surge of rage welling up deep inside of me. "Ha. Yes. I mean, no. Look man, you're my best friend. I love you. I love you so much. I want to. No, listen, I came here because look. There's money. A lot of money. For me and for you. $20,000. For a video game. To play a video game or something, dude. 20 grand. To play a video game for a few hours. Look, I'm just telling you this because I love you. You don't need to take drugs or anything. Just do some virtual reality stuff for a few hours and boom, 20 grand in your pocket, like that." The flood of rage died down as I tried to make sense of what Steve was saying. I couldn't. "What are you saying?" I asked. "Why are you here before the crack of dawn? Sophia's pissed and so am I, really." No, said Steve, with a horrified look on his face. "No, I want you to be happy. Sophia too. Look. Listen. Look. You still have that Tor browser I set you up with and all that?" I guess so." Good. Listen. Look." Steve jammed his hand in his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. "Look. Just type this in and you'll see. You'll see. Easy money, okay. $20,000. You can finally buy that engagement ring you've been." I reached out and smacked Steve across the side of the head. "Jesus Christ, dude, keep it down, yeah?" Steve looked shocked and hurt for a moment before the realization dawned on him. "Oh. Shit. My bad. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. I wish I could delete it. Listen. Are you going to check this out or what?" He held out the crumpled piece of paper to me. I took it and shrugged. "I'll check it out, Steve, but that's it for now. Why don't you head home and sleep this one off, huh?" "Yes," said Steve, nodding his head like crazy. "Yes. Check it out. I'll sleep it off." I started to close the door, but he stuck his foot in just before it closed. Dude? Yeah? Can I use your bathroom?" I opened the door and sighed as he rushed into the bathroom and started puking his guts out. Steve received a ban from our apartment after that, but we stayed in touch. He would text me every few hours, asking if I'd checked out the advertisement for the video game trial yet. The truth was that I had checked it out as soon as he left that morning, but I was undecided. On the one hand, The $20,000 sure was intriguing. That was almost half again as much as I made in a year. More than half, after taxes. And I had a feeling that this wasn't the sort of gig where they took taxes out. I'd be able to do a lot with the money. Take Sophia out for all kinds of dinners, maybe take a vacation and travel somewhere interesting. The kinds of things we always wanted to do, but never could afford to do. Then too, yes, there was that engagement ring. Sophia would say yes either way, even if I presented her with some rolled up aluminum foil. But I wanted it to be special. I wanted it to be special, but I couldn't afford to make it special. On the other hand, well, the whole thing was sketchy as fuck. Who pays some Joe off the street $20,000 to test out a video game? And why go through such shady channels to set the thing up? I knew, from the start, that nothing good could come from it. I knew that, but I did it anyway. Alright, I wrote in a text to Steve. I'm in for the video game thing. My man. We're gonna be swimming in fucking caviar, my dude. Steve and I drove to the address together. It was, strangely, a respectable looking office building. We went up to the entrance and looked at the map of the building. There was a lawyer in there, a counselor, an accountant, and so forth. Shit, said Steve. Which fucking office is it? On cue, his phone buzzed. Oh, he said. The basement. The basement? I asked. Not for real? The basement? I don't know about this, man. Come on, dude. $20,000. And in such a nice building too. I'm used to going to crazy people's garages and swallowing God knows what. This is going to be cake. I nodded, but as we walked to the elevator, my sense of unease grew larger and larger until it was screaming at me, turn around. Whatever this is, it's bad. It's just a video game, I muttered. What's that? Asked Steve. I snapped out of it. I said, let's go play this dumb video game and get paid. That's the attitude, said Steve, grinning, as the elevator door slid closed behind me. We rode down to the basement as I tried to calm myself down. It's a video game. In the basement of a respectable office. Probably, they could only afford to rent the basement. I shut myself up before I could ask. They could only afford to rent the basement, but they're paying you $20,000 each? When we reached the bottom, the door slid open and the first thing that I saw was a man and a woman sitting at a plastic work table in the middle of a large room. Other than that, it looked like a standard basement with equipment like boilers and hot water heaters and exposed wiring and concrete floors. Welcome, said the woman. Stephen and Jason. Is that right? That's us, said Steve, stepping off the elevator. I followed behind and watched as the woman wrote something on her clipboard. That's fantastic, said the man. Right on time. Well, a few minutes late, but that's okay, he laughed. It happens, said the woman, smiling. People have things to do. And we respect that here. That's why we're going to get right down to business. Or, nearly so. First, we need you to sign the contract. The woman held out 2 clipboards and we each took one. Before I looked at it, I took a moment to note that my unease had not subsided, despite the surface friendliness of the man and the woman. Somehow, that made it more bizarre. That they were just sitting there, so poised amongst the plumbing pipes running overhead, ready to offer us a lot of money to play a video game. Where do we play the game? I asked, looking around. I didn't see a TV or anything. Up here, said the man, tapping his head. I started, but Steve gave me a nudge. They'll tell us what to do, he said. Just sign the contract, dude. He scrawled some information into a few boxes and dashed off a signature while I read more closely. The participant agrees not to seek compensation beyond the predetermined amount. In this case, the predetermined amount is $20,000 for participating in one trial game of Total Control, TC. The makers of TC, and the administrators of the trial, hereby relieve themselves of all liability for any injuries sustained during gameplay, with the express agreement of the participant. Injuries? I asked. What kind of game is this? The woman smiled. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to tell you anything about the game until you sign the contract. After that, you'll know all about it. In the event that the participant is unable to collect the predetermined amount at the end of the game, the makers of TC will transfer the funds to a person of the participant's choosing. The following box is for the participant to note the name and address of the next of kin. So you're saying that if we die, you'll give the money to somebody that we choose? I asked. Is that right? That's right, said the man. If we die while playing your game, I stressed. I turned to Steve. This is nuts. Steve shrugged. It's a lot of money, dude. Take it or leave it. I'm taking it. I tried to convince myself to leave it, but then I thought about going to Europe with Sophia. I wrote her name in the next of kin box and then signed the form. I handed the clipboard back to the woman, who scanned it over. Fantastic, she said. Now will you tell us what this game is? I asked. We'll do better than that, said the man. He reached down into a cardboard box on the ground and pulled out what looked to be 2 headsets. We'll show you the game. Please, gentlemen, put these devices on your heads, and prepare for an experience unlike any other. Or so we hope, he added, laughing. Steve didn't hesitate to put the thing on his head. It looked like the front half of a helmet, with an elastic band securing it in place, and a pair of glasses attached to the helmet. I don't see anything, said Steve. It's a 2-player game, said the man, nodding to me. I took a deep breath. It's just a fucking game. I put the headset on and looked through the glasses. Everything looked the same, except it had a slight yellow tint. I watched as the man reached into the box again and brought out 2 video game controllers. He handed one to the woman, and then they each pushed a button. I heard Steve scream a split second before I heard the hiss of some hydraulic mechanism being engaged just above my ear. Then I felt the most intense pain in my life. It felt like something was being jabbed directly into my fucking brain. And that's exactly what was happening. A trickle of blood rolled down the side of my head as my brain lit up with pain. Then I was out of it. When I woke up, I was strapped to a chair, sitting opposite the man and woman behind their table, and next to Steve. There was only a dull ache in my head now, but it didn't take long for me to burst into a full-on panic. Ah, good, said the woman. You're both awake. She stood up calmly, walked over, and undid my straps. What is this? I gasped. What the fuck is this? It's an experiment, said the man. Don't worry, we've ironed out some kinks since the last time we tried it. What experiment? I asked, standing up on wobbly legs. What are you going to do to us? The woman went to work unstrapping Steve. We've implanted a device in your head, she explained. It allows us to control your physical movements. Or so we hope. Steve rubbed his head. What the fuck? You're going to pay us, right? Of course, said the man. He reached into his cardboard box and pulled out 2 thick envelopes. I hope cash is okay. He tossed them across the table to our feet. Steve bent down and tore his open. I saw the cash inside. Okay, he said. That's worth it for a little headache, I guess. Alright. So you've implanted these devices in our brains. Okay. So can we leave now? You can try, said the man. But you won't be able to if we don't want you to, said the woman. And we don't want you to, said the man. Not until you fight to the death, said the woman. I jumped to my feet and tried to slow down my breathing. Come on, man, I said to Steve. That's enough of this. I bent down to pick up my envelope, and then started walking towards the elevator. Thanks for the money, guys, said Steve. Then he followed behind me and pushed the button. The light came on and we waited for the elevator to come. Then I reached my fist back and swung it as hard as I could at Steve's jaw. It connected with a loud crack and I saw a spray of blood leave his mouth. Wha fuck? Groaned Steve, rubbing his jaw. I felt dizzy. What the fuck indeed? Why had I just socked my best friend in the face for no reason? Dude, I'm so sorry. I have no idea why I did that. Steve spit out some blood on the basement floor. Forget it. Let's just get the fuck out of here. The elevator door dinged. Sounds good to me, I said, as the door slid open. I went to step in when suddenly I felt a hand grab my shoulder and roughly spin me around. It was Steve. He had a confused look on his face as he grabbed my neck with both hands and started to choke me. My nerves exploded in panic as I struggled to breathe. I felt myself bring my knee up into Steve's balls. He let go of my neck then and hunched over. What's happening? He gasped. I brought my elbow down on his back and he screamed out in pain. I don't know, I said. I don't know. I looked over at the man and the women still seated behind their plastic work table. They were each holding their game controllers, and smiling. What the fuck is happening? The woman pushed a button and suddenly Steve lunged at me, driving his shoulder into my gut. We hit the ground together, my elbow taking the brunt of the impact. I'm so sorry, cried Steve. I can't stop it. I reached up and grabbed Steve's face in my hand. I didn't want to. I tried to make myself stop, but I couldn't. I began squeezing between my thumb and middle finger, which were spread out and gripped into the spot behind his eye sockets. Stop this, I shouted. Steve sunk into my palm with his teeth and tore a chunk of my flesh off. I felt a searing pain, and a deep fear as he spit my skin onto the ground. I tried to will myself to stay still, but I couldn't. I punched him in the eye. When his head jerked back from the blow, I pushed against his chest, and twisted around, so that now I was on top of him. I took a clump of his hair in my hand and began smashing his head against the concrete floor, again and again and again. I was crying. I was begging myself to stop. I was begging the man and the woman to stop whatever they were doing. I was begging Steve to forgive me, as his head hit the floor with a thunk that sounded wetter and wetter each time, as blood gushed and sprayed everywhere. "Okay," said the man after a while. "That's enough. My player is dead now." I heard the woman laugh. "I told you I would win." Suddenly, I was in control of my own movements again. I set Steve's head gently on the ground and knelt next to him, sobbing. "What have I done?" I wailed. "What did you make me do?" Now," said the man, standing up. "It's not all bad news." He walked over and picked up the envelope of cash that Steve had dropped. "He did name you as his next of kin. So you've just made $40,000. I looked up at him with blurry eyes. "You fucking monsters," I said, standing up. "I'll fucking kill you." I ran at him full of rage, with my arms outstretched. But when I got to him, I slowed down, spread my arms wider, and embraced him in a friendly hug. My mind screamed in terror and rage, but my body wouldn't respond. "We control you now," said the woman. "We're happy to let it go at this. You've served our purpose, as a beta tester. We'll let you get in that elevator, with your money, and you'll never hear from us again. If you honor your contract." Do you remember your contract? There's a copy of it in your back pocket. There's one bit that you should pay careful attention to. The bit about how you are never to tell anyone anything close to what happened here. Don't worry about coming up with an explanation for your friend. We'll take care of that. All that you have to do about this all is literally nothing. Don't say a word. You're probably best forgetting it ever happened. "There's a hose in the corner," said the man. "Clean yourself up, take your money, and leave." I did that. I just wasn't sure if I was the one doing it. After I killed Steve, my life fell apart. Of course it did. I knew that I wasn't in control of my actions at the time, but that didn't help at all. I'd watched the life leave his eyes and I'd gone on smashing his head against the concrete again and again, well after he was dead. I had nightmares about it every night. And the worst part was that I couldn't tell anybody about it. What was I supposed to do? Turn myself into the police? For murdering my best friend literally against my will? How would that help anything? I wanted to tell Sophia. I wanted to tell her so badly, but I couldn't. Those people had put the fear in me. We started doing fancy things together with the money, like going out to eat, but it was no good. It was like a part of me had died when Steve had died. When I had bashed the life out of him. Sophia didn't want fancy dinners and all of the things that money can buy. She wanted me. But I wasn't there anymore. I started drinking more and more. I considered suicide. Not seriously at first. But as time went by, it seemed more and more like a viable option. Anything to stop the never-ending guilt and grief. For her part, Sophia stuck with me for longer than could have been hoped for. But finally it got to be too much. It was clear enough that things were over well before the night we lay in bed together after yet another failed attempt at making love. "I can't do this anymore, Jay," she said. "I love you, but something changed after Steve's accident. I know that he was your best friend and it tore your heart out. But what about life? What about me? You didn't die. I didn't die. We're still here. And I can't do it anymore. It's been 3 months and I don't think I've heard you laugh once. I'm not blaming you. And I can't tell you how much I wanted to be able to do this. It's my failure, really. But like I said, we're still alive and I want to live while I can. And I want you to live too." I clenched my jaw, trying to fight back the tears. I tried to think rationally. If you really love her, you'll tell her to fuck off. But I didn't. "I have to tell you something," I said. Then, as my soul screamed in horror, I smothered her with a pillow. I've been in bed with Sophia's corpse for 2 days now. Yesterday, I got a text. "We have gathered all the data we need. Your contract has been fulfilled. Your unit has been deactivated. We thank you for your participation, and wish you the best of luck." I don't know what to do. I'll start here, by typing this out. My name is Jay, and I killed my best friend and the love of my life, but I wasn't in control of my body at the time. Where do I go from here? Posted by /nslewis. My wife complained of a constant buzzing sound, but it was all in her head. Then it came out. Amanda was standing in the darkness, beating her fists against the refrigerator door. The commotion had wrenched me out of a deep and dreamless sleep. When I'd crept down the hall to investigate, I'd had panicked thoughts of intruders, stealing into the house to gut my family. But when I made it to the kitchen, I found only my wife, standing in her nightie, looking somewhat like an apparition, banging in a steady rhythm upon the hapless appliance. I nudged the dimmer switch up, in the hopes of shedding even just a little light on the situation. It didn't work. I still didn't understand what was happening. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You don't hear that? That fucking buzz?" I listened. It was more of a hum than a buzz, I thought, and a very gentle one at that. One you wouldn't notice unless you were paying attention. That's how it always sounds. "No. It's broken. You don't hear that? It's fucking loud. I can't sleep. It's keeping me up." I nudged the switch a little higher and now I could see that Amanda wasn't kidding around. She looked positively haggard, and, in the light, even more like a ghost than she had in the dark. "It sounds normal," I said again. That's what I was really afraid of. Amanda closed her eyes and spread a hand out across her face, gripping her temples with her thumb and middle finger. "It's in my head." "You hear a buzzing sound in your head?" I bit my lip. "Do you think?" Yes. I picked something up on my trip. God knows what it could be. I took all of my vaccines. Those don't work sometimes. So it would seem. I was groggy and wanting to get back to bed. "Well, we'll figure it out in the morning. We'll get you right to the doc, first thing. For now, try to get some sleep." "I can't." "Take an Ambien." "I've already had 3. It sounds like a fucking beehive in there, Walt. It won't shut up." I looked at the clock. "Work in 4 hours. You've tried Tylenol?" "I've been awake all night." "I've tried Tylenol, yes. I've tried reading the fucking Bible too, before you ask. I've tried everything. It won't stop." "Should we go to the ER? Wake up the kids and go to the ER? Or call an ambulance?" Amanda shook her head. "Just go back to bed, Walt. I'll be okay. Just go back to bed, and on your way out, kill that fucking light." I did just that. A few hours later, with the sun creeping into the sky, I shut up the alarm clock and looked over to see that Amanda hadn't made it back to bed. I found her soon enough, sitting on the kitchen floor. She had pulled the refrigerator away from the wall and unplugged it. She looked wild and unhealthy, less the ghost now, and more the decomposing corpse. "Honey? It won't stop. It will never stop. I made you coffee." "The buzzing still?" I asked, pulling a mug out of the cabinet and pouring myself a cup. "Like a swarm of bees," she said. "No. Like a swarm of angry wasps." "Never went to sleep, huh?" "Never did." "All right. I'm calling off work today and I'm taking you to Dr. Henderson." I looked down at her. She had a blank look on her face, and for a moment, I could vividly hear a buzzing in my own head. "We'll get you all fixed up." Jacob Henderson was a friend of mine. We played poke together every Friday night. I called his personal line to find him just on his way to the hospital, and filled him in on my wife's condition. Amanda's got it bad. This buzzing in her head that kept her up all night. We think she got it from stomping around in Thailand last week, though she was up to date on her vaccines. Well, I'll go ahead and clear a spot for her. Can you bring her in right away?" "Yes. Thank you, Jake." I hung up and turned to Amanda. She was shivering now, her teeth audibly chattering. The sound made me shiver. "He said he can fit you in first thing. I'll drop you off, bring the kids to school, then come right back to check in on you." My wife gave no indication that she'd heard me. "Amanda?" Suddenly she leapt to her feet and took off running, out of the kitchen and down the hall. After a moment, I heard a door slam shut. I followed behind, to the bathroom door, and knocked. "Amanda?" I was answered by a terrible, throaty retch, followed by a splash, as of a large volume of liquid being poured out over the tile floor. Aaron came out of his room, dressed in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in a cowlick, and asked, "Was that Mom? Is she okay?" "Your mother is feeling a bit under the weather today, but she'll be fine." From the bathroom, another retch, another splash. "I'm going to drop her off with Dr. Henderson, and he'll fix her right up. But I need your help this morning, okay buddy? Need you to go get your sister moving, and then the both of you get ready for school. Okay?" Aaron nodded and walked off to his sister's room. I tried the knob. Locked. "You okay in there, honey?" Silence. Or was it? I put my ear against the door. Not silence. Buzzing. Very faint buzzing, but definitely present. "Amanda? Please answer." What if she'd passed out? Maybe she fell and hit her head on the way down. I decided to pick the lock. It was a privacy lock, and would be easy to do with a straightened out paperclip. I pulled my head away from the door, and an instant later there was a click and Amanda slipped out of an opening that was barely big enough for her body to fit through. She closed the door behind her, and kept her hand on the knob. "I'm fine, honey," she said. "Totally, 100% better. The buzzing's gone and I feel fine. Just got a little sick. I'm thinking it was something I ate." She really did look better. Tired still, but no longer on the verge of death. "Well, let's have Dr. Henderson look you over anyway. It's all arranged." "No," she snapped. An ugly rage flashed across her face and then was gone, leaving a gentle smile in its wake. "I told you. I'm feeling quite well now." I didn't want to press the matter too insistently. Taking her to the hospital would mean missing work, and when I missed work, the work didn't magically disappear, but rather piled up on my desk. I was just getting over one ulcer, and wanted to avoid another if possible. "You're sure?" Amanda nodded. "If you're sure." "I am. But, could you still take the kids in today? I'm going to clean up in the bathroom, then hit the hay. I'm beat." "Of course." I nodded at the door. "Let me just do my business in there, and I'll be out of your hair." No, you can't go in there. It's embarrassing. Nothing I haven't seen before. Come on now. I'll be late. Use the kids' bathroom. This one is a war zone. I can't let you in there." I shrugged and was getting ready to turn around when I heard that buzzing sound again, a little louder now, coming from the other side of the door. "What's that sound? That buzz?" Amanda was silent for a beat, then let out a mechanical laugh. It didn't sound like her at all. "Now you're the one hearing a buzz? Maybe you should consult with Dr. Henderson yourself, after you drop off the kids. You probably have a case of what I had. It's not fun at all, I promise you that." Something's off about her, I thought. Then, sure there is. She's been up all night and just puked her guts out. Relax. It didn't look fun, no. I headed off to the kids' bathroom. As soon as I was a few steps down the hall, I heard Amanda open the door again. I stopped and turned to see her disappear back inside. With the door open, the buzzing grew temporarily louder. There's something in there. It's not in my head. But then, I realized, Amanda had spent all night in front of the refrigerator, convinced that the noise was coming from there, even after I had borne witness to the contrary. Maybe I do have a bit of food poisoning. I put the matter out of my mind and went about my day. That afternoon, at the crest of a wave of progress against my towering workload, I got a call from my kids' school. Amanda hadn't picked them up. Normally, she picked them. The school secretary said that she'd tried the other numbers listed before mine, but none of them had reached a human being. I was a little put out, but figured, fair enough. Amanda had a rough night, and needs the rest. She's probably off in dreamland right now. I picked up Aaron and Margaret and, to their delight, took them out for ice cream. I wanted to give my wife a little extra time to sleep before I dropped the kids off with her and went back to work. But I did need to get back to it, so as soon as we got home, and the kids went barreling off for their toys, I went to my bedroom, bracing myself for the unpleasant but necessary task of awakening my wife. But my wife wasn't in our bedroom. Amanda? I knew that she was home because her car was in the driveway. But if not in bed, then where? And why wasn't she answering her phone? I walked through the house, calling her name, sticking my head into each room. When I got to the hall bathroom, I was greeted by a closed door and an undeniable buzz. Something was very wrong. A part of me wanted to pretend that it wasn't, and to just keep walking down the hall, out the door, and into my car. Back to the office to make some more progress. Make some more money. But no. That was my wife in there. I oved her. We'd made vows, and had children together, who were now playing in the living room, oblivious to any kind of danger. I couldn't abandon them either, though some dark and primal urge, stirred by the buzzing sound, was telling me to run for my life no matter the cost. Amanda had been right, it really did sound like a swarm of angry wasps. It was menacing in a way that was both organic and mechanical, which, I suppose, was true enough of wasps. Single-minded drones, like programmed robots, but alive too, and looking, finally, for nothing more than an excuse to plunge their poisonous stingers into your flesh. I knocked on the door. Amanda? I knew that she wouldn't answer, but I hoped that she would. I hoped that she was in there, perfectly fine, having just woken up from her nap, and that the buzz was from her use of some kind of electrical device. Let it be a vibrator if need be. Hell, Let her be in there with the defensive line of the Dallas Cowboys, her only requirement that they trim their public hair with an electric razor before she sucks each of their cocks utterly dry. Let it be anything other than the unspeakably awful thing that I knew it absolutely would be, even as I didn't know the specifics of what that nightmare would manifest itself as. I took a breath and tried the knob that I knew wouldn't turn. It didn't. The buzzing seemed to intensify, becoming agitated by my attempts at intrusion. There was no more procrastinating. I made my way through the living room, where Aaron and Margaret were engaging in a mock battle between superheroes. "Super freeze," cried my daughter. "It didn't work," said my son. "I drank some antifreeze before I got here." In the study, I rummaged through my desk drawers until I found a paperclip. I straightened it out with unsteady hands and wielded it, past my playing children, back to the bathroom door. Just get it over with, I thought, sticking the wire into the small hole in the knob. I wiggled it around a bit until I heard the click of the lock coming undone. I was almost grateful for the sound of my pulse thudding in my head as I pushed the door open. It temporarily drowned out the droning buzz coming from within. There, inside the bathroom, was my wife, Amanda. She was stark naked, and crouched above what looked like a writhing ball of insect larvae and human shit. Some of the larger larvae were emerging from this central mass and crawling all over Amanda, finding a suitable piece of flesh and attaching themselves there to suck out the final bit of sustenance needed to become adults. Above her head, hanging from the ceiling, was a nascent nest, swarmed by what did indeed look like wasps, striped black and yellow, buzzing, and nasty. Amanda was twitching all over, but otherwise unmoving. Her eyes were blank and her face was slack. She was, I realized, gone. Overtaken body and mind by these parasitic wasps. One of them had found her, probably while she was in Thailand, and had laid its eggs inside of her. Did it do this through a sting, or by crawling into her mouth while she slept? No matter the method, the insect had succeeded, and the eggs thrived in my wife's body, protected from the outside world. She gave them a free ride to America, back to our house, and then, when they were ready to hatch, she had vomited them up on the bathroom floor. There, in various stages of development, they had fed all day, either on her shit or her blood. They grew fast into adults, who now swarmed around her head and plucked the hair off of her head in order to build their nest. I understood this on instinct, like how a mouse understands a cat. Come to think of it, there was a parasite for that, too. Toxoplasma gondii, which thrives in cats but will settle initially for a mouse. The parasite's special talent was to make the rodent unafraid of felines and so easy prey. The cat, without sport, would eat the oblivious mouse, its flight function disengaged, and the parasite would get what it wanted all along, to live on and reproduce in the cat. Life can be a nasty business all around. My own fear response, however, remained fully intact, and even as I took in the scene before me, as the thoughts swirled in my head, contributing to the discordant symphony in there, alongside the organic/mechanical buzz and my pounding pulse, I retreated. I slammed the door behind me and braced myself against the wall in front of me, dizzy. Good God, what do I do? Amanda was beyond help, it seemed. There was no coming back from that. Her mind, and so her body, had been taken over by them, in the same way that certain other species of parasitic wasps will take over the body of a spider, and have it spin a protective cocoon around them, or how certain fungi will take over the minds of ants, turning them into half-dead slaves under their control. Nobody quite knew how it worked, only that it did work, and was terrifying. Those things were in there, all too rapidly growing into adults, building their nest. Amanda's body would serve them for a while. But once that resource was depleted, they'd want to be seeking other hosts, seeping through every crack, looking for fresh meat. Maybe that would happen sooner rather than later. Maybe they were already searching for the exit. I turned slowly and looked at the crack under the door. In horror, I tore off my shit and spread it out on the floor, attempting to blockade the gaping gateway between the horrible world of the bathroom and this world. In even more horror, I looked down at my naked arm to see one of them on there, crawling. I slapped at it madly, until it was mush. Had it stung me? Or was that just the sting from my own slaps? Get the kids. Get out of there. Then call the police or call an exterminator or burn the house down. Just get out of there. I ran into the living room and grabbed my kids roughly by their arms, dragging them along behind me. Did it sting me? Did it inject me with its nightmare eggs? Are there more on me? Did it sting me? Is it too late? Are they right behind us, giving chase? Did it sting me? As my mind screamed, my children screamed. That hurts, Dad. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I didn't stop to explain. I kept running, praying that the buzz that filled my head was only the sound of my nerves sizzling out. I am told that when the police arrived at the scene, my wife was already dead. After some pressing on my part, an officer disclosed that there was no writhing ball of larvae on the tile floor, nor any larvae attached to Amanda's body, but that there was a massive nest hanging from the ceiling, with a thick swarm of adult wasps encircling it. It happens, the officer said. They'll build a nest wherever they can. He shuddered. Nasty fuckers. Do you really think we wouldn't notice a colony of wasps building a giant nest in our bathroom? How long does that normally take? Weeks? And we didn't notice? I was frustrated because nobody believed my story about some sort of supercharged species of parasitic wasps. Wasps might take over the body of a ladybug, I was told, but no species exists that can take over the body of a person. And yet no other really plausible explanation for what had happened was proffered. I certainly would have noticed it, the officer admitted. But then again, I'm trained to observe my environment at all times. I'm trained to notice the slightest detail out of place. I tried a different approach. The nest was made out of her hair. You tested that, right? Lots of stray hairs in a bathroom, available to anyone or anything looking for such material. I sat in disbelief for a moment, across the desk from this officer. I knew that I couldn't convince him of the truth, he'd already made up his mind. The truth lay in matters beyond his knowledge and understanding of the world, and, rather than expand his understanding of the world, he had chosen to contort the truth to make it fit. This is how the world will end, I thought. After days and nights of mourning and erratic sleep characterized by terrifying nightmares, I had little emotion to lend the thought. There was only a flicker of rage. Let me review. According to what you're telling me, a massive colony of wasps was picking up my wife's stray hairs for weeks on end, and building a huge nest in our bathroom, completely without our notice. And then, one day, Amanda undresses to get in the shower and lo, she finally notices the enormous nest. The sudden sight frightens her so much that she defecates, and then drops dead of a heart attack. The marks all over her body? An unexplained but unrelated rash of some sort. Case closed. Is that right? Unfortunately, sir, that's the long and short of it. I know that it's hard to hear. It seems such an undignified way to go. If it makes you feel better, I saw that nest with my own eyes, and I'm not ashamed to say that I pissed myself. There's no shame in being human. Those fuckers are scary. One of them got me in the neck while I was there. I'll tell you, the only thing worse than getting stung by one of those things is getting shot, which I have been. The officer patted his shoulder. Right here. You got stung? All in the line of duty. I stood up. Well, I have to thank you for your time. I needed some closure, I suppose, and now I have it. The officer smiled. I'm very sorry about your wife, sir. The only advice that I can give is to hang in there. Life goes on. You'll see. Even now, somebody needs your attention. It's okay. You can go ahead and answer your phone now. It must be important. The damn thing's been buzzing for 5 minutes straight. My phone was in the car with the kids. It can wait. Thank you again, and good luck. I left his office and walked outside. The sky was overcast. The investigation was complete, as was the fumigation, and the kids and I were due to move back into our house. We were in fact on our way to do just that. But suddenly, it seemed like a good idea to go somewhere very far away instead. Posted by nslewis. I fell into a mass grave. It was even worse than it sounds. I looked through a gap in the forest canopy, up at the sky alive with sunset blaze, and thought, beyond the heavy shroud of human concern, life is vibrantly beautiful. Then I took another step and I was falling into the earth, my head bright with shock as my surroundings grew darker and darker. I fell, thinking only that I was about to die and I didn't know why or even really how. I managed to twist around during my descent and land on my back, so that my pack cushioned the fall a bit. There was an uncertain and horrifying moment where my breath wouldn't come to me and my nervous system still screamed against the prospect of imminent death. When my breath finally returned, it brought with it a cloying stench, which cut short any feelings of relief about being alive. I tried not to consciously put a name to that smell and plugged my nose, while sucking in the air through my mouth, until I had resumed something approaching a steady rhythm. Then I looked up at the opening of the hole I had fallen into, where the last of the day's light was dissipating. It was impossible to tell how far up it was, but it was far enough. I would have to climb out, somehow. I gingerly propped myself up on an elbow, aching from the drop, and noted for the first time that the ground wasn't dirt. It wasn't quite soft, and it wasn't quite hard, though sometimes harder and sometimes softer. It was lumpy, and cold. Death. The thought came to me unbidden, and despite my best efforts to keep it at bay. That smell is death. And below you? Corpses. You've landed in a fucking mass grave. I sprang to my feet and took a series of careful steps, trying not to trip over what I imagined in the darkness were body parts, an armpit here, ready to snag my foot. A knee there, jutting out of the mound of dead bodies. Crunch. Squish. I kept moving forward, focusing first and foremost on finding a way out of this mess, my arms stretched out unsteadily, seeking a wall. The walls, I soon discovered, were slick with some slimy substance. Too slick to climb, but I tried anyway, desperately scrabbling around with my hands and feet, searching for a hold. There was none. After a few minutes of effort, I got winded again, and had to suck in the rank air, hard and deep. Be calm, I thought, attempting to subdue my flight response. There was nowhere to run to. I needed to use my head. Not your head. Your phone. I set my pack down on the sickening ground, and reached in the front pocket. It was wet from the landing. I found the phone, and even before I pulled it out, my heart sank. It felt rough and jagged, like the screen had shattered. I took it out and began mashing away at the power button. There was no response. Fuck. A shirt from my bag served as a makeshift respirator to stifle the smell as I stood there considering my increasingly hopeless situation. I was deep in the woods of northern Maine, alone, well off the hunting trail that I had started from. Even if I had stuck to the trail, it wasn't hunting season, so there was unlikely to be anybody around. The owner of the property was possibly home, but his house was miles away. Why did I have to go so deep? I'd taken these trips every few months to get as far away from human civilization as I could, to cleanse myself, when life became overstuffed with worries and pettiness. But now I would have given anything for the slightest proximity to that civilization. Let there be a cabin somewhere nearby, I prayed. And out loud, help. Hellllllp. The hole seemed to swallow up the sound of my shouts. I doubted if they could have been heard even by somebody standing right next to the opening. But, out of sheer panic, I kept yelling. Each time that I pulled the shirt away from my mouth to yell, I had to inhale the stench of death. As time wore on, the shouts became increasingly hoarse and desperate, until I lost my voice altogether. By then, it was as dark above as it was below, and a steady flow of adrenaline, spent uselessly, had run its course and left me exhausted. The visceral and immediate horror, while still overwhelming, had lessened enough for me to think about things other than my escape. Such as, why is there a mass grave in the middle of the woods? Who do these bodies belong to, and who put them here, and why? Suddenly, it occurred to me that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to go on shouting when I got my voice back. Not without the answers to those questions. Maybe that cabin I had been dreaming about earlier actually existed, and served as the home of some brutal psychopathic serial killer who was dumping his victims in this hole? Calm down. You're not even sure that these are dead bodies. What else are they? I muttered to myself in a raspy whisper. Only one way to find out. Shit. Gotta do it. Gotta know what you're up against. I struck a match and it confirmed to my eyes in a flash what my other senses had already discovered. A twisted mess of corpses, tangled together, from wall to wall. What was that though? Can't pretend you didn't see it. Just the shadows. I've seen all I've need to see. That was no fucking shadow. That was a grotesque, inhuman face. And wasn't that a tail poking up in the corner? Like a lizard's tail, but massive? Just the shadows, I tried to insist to myself. Not gonna do you any good to lie here. You need to know what you're up against. It took 6 tries to light the next match, due to my hands shaking so much. With the flaming stick pinched between my fingers, I looked over to where I thought I'd seen a tail. Thankfully, it wasn't actually a tail, but rather an arm sticking straight up, rigid with death. Still, there was something off about the arm. The match burned out before I could figure out what exactly was off. I settled on explaining it away as a trick of the shadows again. Now the face. Feeling slightly more confident after seeing no tail, I flicked another match to life and held it in front of the face. But only for a moment, because the shock of what I saw made me drop the match. It sizzled out below me, extinguishing the light cast upon the nightmare vision before me. However, the image stayed tattooed in my mind. The face was, without a doubt, not human. There was a row of 6 or 7 small eyes arranged in an arc across its bony forehead. At least, I presumed they were eyes, rolled back into a pure white death gaze. The reason that I couldn't say for certain how many there were supposed to be was that a bullet wound sat in the center of them all, and had either shot one of them out, or landed in a space in between. The wound itself was black with rot. Or maybe this thing bleeds black, I thought. The ridges of bone didn't stop at the forehead, but spread out all across the face, seemingly at random, like a topographical map. Running between these mountains were branching rivers of thin black tubes dividing up the otherwise gray flesh. Is it gray normally, or is that just because it's dead? I wondered. The tubes all led to what was perhaps the most distributing feature of the thing. There, where the nose and mouth should be on a human being, was a tangle of perhaps a dozen larger tubes, open on one end, and adorned with sharp black thorns. They looked designed to suck the life force out of whatever things the creature fed upon. It took a tremendous effort not to soil myself when I saw that face lit up. But I didn't want to be covered in shit on top of everything else. Instead, I let my terror flow out of my eyes, sobbing like a child, no longer impressed by the majesty of life. Hours later, beyond exhausted but unwilling to lay down on those horrid corpses, I came up with a desperate idea. I couldn't call for help on my phone, and I didn't want to shout anymore. There was no telling who, or what, was lurking out there, or what they'd do if they heard me. Nor could I scale the walls. I had tried every spot in that hole, and the walls were all the same, slick with slime, and without purchase. After seemingly exhausting my possibilities, again and again, I kicked at one of the bodies underfoot out of sheer frustration. My kick sent an appendage into motion in the darkness, and I heard it slap against some other dead flesh. And that's when I got my idea. I couldn't climb the walls, no. But maybe I could climb the bodies. I felt around until I found a stray limb sticking out from the mass. I dug my feet in and pulled on it, like my life depended on it. I strained every muscle in my body, but I felt a shift below me. I kept working at it, stopping to catch my breath or take a precious drink from my water bottles every now and then. Once I even sat down for a spell. I was beyond being grossed out by that point. If I was planning on piling these things up and using them to scale my way to freedom, I had to get over my squeamishness. And so I did. I kept at it, yanking at the limb. Then, just when I thought the corpse was almost free of the mess, I heard a terrible pop and went sprawling back on my ass, holding the now detached arm in my hand. A part of me didn't want to get back up. Why bother? Just close your eyes and let death take you away. That's what it will end with anyway. But a larger part of me wanted to get the fuck out of there. I tossed the limb aside and stood up slowly. There has to be one of them on top. One of them that's easier to get at than the rest. That's where you start. I was down to 5 matches. I lit one of them and looked around carefully, trying to make a mental map of the corpses, as horrible as they were to behold. I saw a few that were, if not completely clear, then at least less buried than the rest. The match burned down to my fingers, stinging me, and then left me in the darkness again. I worked as methodically and efficiently as I could, uncovering one body, and dragging it over against a wall, then the next body, rolling it on top of the first, and so on, until I had a small pile of corpses that I could climb upon. It was nowhere near tall enough to reach the top, but it was a start. I kept at it, working harder than I'd ever worked before. Eventually, the pile got too high for me to heave another body on top of. So I had to make a little step out of more bodies. There was that song, Stairway to Heaven, but what I was doing was building a stairway from hell, one bizarre and terrible corpse at a time. Fortunately, at least for the purposes of my project, there was no shortage of bodies. Every time I dragged one away, there was another waiting right below it. I wondered all the time, of course, what these things were, where they'd come from, and who'd put them there. But it was an idle train of thought, the kind you have when you're focused on something else. When I gauged that I was about halfway to the top, I decided to take a good rest. My body needed it. How I was still going was beyond me. Light was creeping back into the entrance of the hole above me, and I was down to my last bottle of water. Maybe I'll just close my eyes for a few minutes. Get my strength back up. Then I heard a gunshot come from somewhere above and decided to get back to work. Some time later, dripping in sweat and gore, I caught the first sense of freedom. Hints of pine pitch and moss wafting down and wrestling with the oppressive smell of death and my own stink. Only a few more bodies, I thought, reaching up from the top of my mound towards the edge of the hole. Maybe only one more, if I can jump high enough. The thought of dragging even one more body up all that way filled me with despair, but that aroma of freedom gave me a surge of strength. I was ready to scamper back down the stairway from hell when I heard voices from above getting nearer. It sounded like 2 of them, very male. I froze. What do I do? Call for help? No. There's no telling what their intentions are, and you're almost there on your own anyway. Play dead until they go away. I dropped on top of one of the bodies. Unfortunately, my face landed right in the thing's crotch. But I had determined long ago that they had no discernible sex organs, whatever they were. It hadn't been a discovery I'd wanted to make, but rather one that had literally fallen upon me, when one of the bodies had rollen off my mound and onto me. I lay still and listened. Can you believe it? I really can't. I mean, stop. Hold on. I need a rest. It's right there. Come on, man. It's right there. We get this one in and we can relax. Shit. Shoulda brought some weenies to roast, now that I think about it. A 6 or 2. I gotta rest for a second, man. You can carry them both yourself if you want. Alright, don't get your panties all wadded up now. We'll rest if that's what you want. Just saying, think of all the R&R we'll be getting after we throw this some bitch in. What if this isn't the last one though? That's all I'm saying. You don't trust the censors? After all this time? When have they ever led us astray? I mean, these fuckers are smart, Bob. You know that. Maybe they found a way to hide? From the censors? Use your head. There was a pause. Yeah. I guess you're right. No hiding from the censors. You're goddamn right. You ready now? Let's do it. I heard both men grunt, and then their heavy footsteps were getting closer. Then they were right above me. On 3? Got it. 1, 2, 3. I opened one eye to see a body fall past me and get swallowed up by the darkness below. It hit the other bodies with a soft thud. Now for this sad sack. They repeated the procedure and tossed a second body into the pit. Shit. Pile's getting pretty high, isn't it? I can make them out down there now. You see? Yeah. Let's just get this over with. Fine by me. There was some rustling above, followed by a glug glug sound. I felt something wet splash against my face, and then the smell of gasoline drowned out all of the other smells. They're going to torch the whole thing, I realized. I turned my head slowly around and looked up. 2 men stood there, both of them with rifles slung over their shoulders, and one of them smoking a cigarette. You know, said the one smoking, I'm almost gonna miss these fuckers. Not me, said the other. The first laughed. Yeah, I guess not. Then he flicked the cigarette into the pit. Flames erupted below me, starting to climb up my pile of corpses. There was no way out now. After all that, there was no way out. I stood up and shouted, wait. In an instant, both guns were trained on me. The bigger man, the cigarette smoker, spoke first. The fuck are you? It's one of them, cried the other one. Don't look like one of them. They're smart. They're smart, I told you. Wait. I screamed again, feeling the heat rise. I'm not one of them. I promise you. I was just out for a hike. I paid Mr. Peterson to camp on his land. I swear. Do you know Mr. Peterson? Yeah, we know Peterson, said the big one. Or we did, when he was among the living. He was an unlucky man. And so are you, if a man's what you really are. Don't matter the least in the end though, I suppose. He cocked his gun and his partner did likewise. It's jump into the flames or be shot to death, I realized. I felt like I had at the start, falling helplessly into the darkness, into certain death. Please, I said. Please don't kill me. The big one opened his mouth to say something but nothing came out. His eyes just got very wide and then his body grew limp and he collapsed. His gun fell down into the hole, and his arm dangled over the edge like a wet noodle. What had happened? Had his partner suddenly grown a conscience? I looked at him. No, he was just as confused as I was. And then, at the same time, we both understood what had happened. Stepping into view above the dead man was of those things, whose kin lay dead and burning below it. Its face tubes were dripping in the big man's blood. 7 eyes, I saw now clearly. They had 7 eyes, and all 7 of them now turned to gaze upon the little man. The man was able to get off a shot into the thing's gut. Its blood was indeed black, I saw, but it was too late for him. The thing's tubes were already buried in his neck, and they fell together into the flaming pit of hell that I was trapped in. I felt myself sink a few inches as the flesh below me turned to bubbling liquid. The fire was climbing, and would be upon me in a matter of seconds. One more body, I thought mournfully. That's all I needed. What about him? I muttered, looking at the big man, with his arm dangling down into the hole, but the bulk of his body on solid ground. I guess it's as good a shot as you've got. I leapt through the air over in his direction, the heat below scorching me all the way up to the testicles. I reached a zenith and time slowed down. I could feel the moment where I stopped going up, and started going down. And in that moment, I reached up and grabbed the dead man's arm. I pulled as hard as I could, and his corpse started to slide into the hole to join the rest of the dead in cremation. I stopped falling and gained the slightest bit of upward momentum. I clawed my way up the man's back, dragging him down at the same time. Then I saw that he would be of no more help to me. It was now or never. I reached my left hand up and dug wildly into the edge of the opening. The strain was almost too much to bear. Almost, but not quite. I brought my right hand up just as the man's body fell all the way into the inferno. I hung there, my mind screaming, knowing that I couldn't pull myself up. My feet scrambled out of pure instinct against the wall that I had tried to scale so many times. And there they found some unexpected traction, perhaps because the heat had melted away the slime. Whatever the reason behind the newfound friction, my body took full advantage of it, exerting a strength that would never have been there under less dire circumstances. I hauled myself up and out of the hole, and then passed out from insurmountable exhaustion. I awoke to a wet sensation on my face, like a dog was licking it. But when I opened my eyes, I didn't see a dog. I saw 7 small black eyes starting at me. The creature's tubes were exploring my face. "Please," I gasped through a mouth raw with thirst. "It wasn't me that killed your kind. I mean you no harm. Please believe me. I just want to go home." The creature made some clicking sounds and was answered by more of the same from behind it. Then it stood up slowly. 5 more of its kind were at my feet, standing tall in long white robes. Together, they turned and walked into the woods in a smooth gliding motion. The sky was a painting of rich, swirling reds and purples. I didn't know if it was dusk or dawn. I didn't know what those creatures were or what they wanted. I got painfully to my feet and began the long journey home.